Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy, and you're listening to my podcast, Vox and Hops, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope that you've been having a good week. I have been having a great week, super busy, but I would rather be busy than be bored, so I'm grateful for that. Tomorrow night is another Vox and Hops Thirsty Thursday virtual hang. I love these. I look forward to these. Last week's was a bit crazy. I had a lot of fun. I am super stoked to do again. This is happening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is just a casual hang where I hang out with some of the Vox and Hops alumni. You Vox and Hops heads and some of my closest friends show up here and there. So come out tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Times, to the Vox and Hops Thirsty Thursday virtual hang. The link for that is available in the description of this podcast. On today's episode, I'm with Steffen Kummerer of Obscura and Thulcandra. Here it is, Vox and Hops, episode number 135.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm with Steffen Kummerer of Obscura and Thulcandra. It is great to be with you. I have to say that this is happening because of another Vox and Hops alumni. Huge shout out to Branislav Panic from Bain. Thank you for hooking us up. How are you, Steffen?
I'm doing fine. I'm sitting over here in Landshut in my tiny little town. It's an hour north of Munich in Germany. And as well, the world is crying Oktoberfest got cancelled this year, so the mood is kinda so-so. But aside from that, well, we enjoy quarantine, staying at home, working on music, well, and enjoy life. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I've been speaking to a lot of people, and a lot of people have been saying that not much is actually different from their day-to-day. The only thing that's missing is actually going to shows.
Yeah, going to shows. You're not allowed to enter any bars, cafes, anything like that. So basically, like the same social distancing as everywhere in the world. Just that, well, there's no beer.
We're very lucky that here in Quebec, in Canada, the craft beer stores have started a delivery service. I got my shipment yesterday from Bière. I'm super stoked about that. Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends and talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. What beer do you have on your side that we're going to share virtually?
I just got a complete mixed box or crate of beer from a fan as a little thank you for some greetings I did some time ago. And I do have a certain craft beer from Franconia. It's an unfiltered, in German called Naturtrüb, blonde beer, kind of heavy. And if it's not filtered, you have a lot of Fuselalkohole in it. So that means it's a beer you have to enjoy. You drink one of it. If you have more than two, you have a lot of headache on the next day. So if you're familiar with Belgian beers or Dutch beers like Grimbergen or Duvel, then you know what I'm talking about. So
Absolutely.
This is somewhere in between a dark and a blonde beer, but very, very spicy.
Oh, cool. And what is the percentage on that?
5.2.
Okay, so it's not so mean. Yeah, it's not so mean. Yeah, it's always dangerous when we play in Belgium and they give us a crate of Duvel. I'm super happy. I'm super happy, but then the next morning I'm not so happy. On my side, I'm drinking Noctem Artisans Brasseurs, which is a brewery out of Quebec City. It's their Humulus Felidae. It's an IPA that was brewed with Sabro hops and Ekuanot hops, and the Sabro hops are actually from the Yakima Chief hops, which is a special hop distributor in North America. Huge shout out to Luc, who I'm going to have on the podcast shortly to talk about all their hops and everything that they're doing. I am really in love with this new hops that's been, well, it's not new, but it's been quite popular recently, the Sabro hops that has like a coconutty note to it. I love it. Just one second, I'm going to pour this out. Tell me, are you a craft beer enthusiast?
So. I'm a quite conservative beer drinker, if you call me a beer drinker at all. On occasion, for example, shows or sitting together with friends. I do drink a beer here and then, sometimes even more. Last time we met was kind of fun.
That is right. I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you brought it up, I will. Yeah, we did have a good time when we came through Munich last time. It was a cryptopsy aborted, benighted, and cytotoxin. Great night, lots of fun, and we did have a few too many beers.
I think so, yeah.
So cheers.
Cheers, by the way. I'm not a super craft beer enthusiast. I'm trying everything I get, that's correct, but when I'm out with friends, I rather take a classic blonde from Munich instead of an IPA. But I have to admit, since I like to try out everything, on the last show of our last tour, we had a cooperation with a local brewery, like Metalheads. They opened up their own brewery, and they even start to brew their own hops, like hops that are actually not used for beer anymore, and they start to bring back traditions that have been around 15th and 14th century. So going back to the very, very, very roots. So we teamed up with them and made our own IPA, which is somewhere in between what you call a classic Indian pale ale and a blonde. So it's not that herb or that bitter as an IPA can be, and it's somewhere for my taste it fits like the golden thin line in between regular blonde, as you call it, and a classic IPA. And that's like a very nice experiment, and people really liked it. And I still have a couple of beers here. If you want, I can send you one, but I'm not sure if it's working out sending alcohol in bottles to Canada, but I will check that out.
I am very interested, and I will talk to you about that after the podcast about how that can happen. Take me back. Do you know the name of that brewery that made this brew for you guys?
Yes, Sabro.
Cool. So shout out to them for going back to the old traditional style of brewing and doing stuff with metal bands. I love that. Take me back to your youth. You're growing up in your parents' or guardian's house. What music was playing when you were not in control of putting the music on? What would have been the soundtrack of your youth?
There was basically no soundtrack. No, my parents didn't listen to much music, to be honest. It's rarely in, musicians' life, because most of the musicians grew up in like a musical, not educated family, but at least consuming family. And I got that question here and then, and always had to think about it, but my parents didn't listen to music at all. They were not too interested about that or haven't had time for it. We neither had a quality stereo at home. So what I grew up with was a couple of cassettes I got when I was born in East Germany, and there was no music available at all. So when we moved over to Western Germany before the wall was down, we got simply, more or less eaten up by everything you could get at the same time in terms of culture, in terms of not only music. And then I listened to everything that was available from, mid and late 80s. So let's talk about Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, of course. You can't go wrong with the boss.
Dark times, I can tell you.
What would have been that first show that you went to go see? I know that Germany has such a rich musical culture for bands coming through and touring. What would have been the first metal show that you attended?
I think it was a Cannibal Corpse show in 1998 with Nile, the Brazilian Crisian, Marduk, and Dark Funeral. So it was the first show I attended in Munich. I live a little bit outside, an hour outside. Went there by train as a tiny little teenager and got simply blown away by only blast beats, black metal, extreme death metal. And I loved it.
What a fucking lineup. Holy shit.
Yeah, I think it was called No Mercy Fest. Kind of fitting, isn't it?
It's what a crazy. That nowadays would just be huge. Crazy. Do you remember your first time on stage?
As a metal musician or as a musician overall?
Oh, we can go back into, because you started out. Where did you start playing then?
I actually got like a scholarship for a boarding school when I was 9 years old for musically gifted kids. So I was basically living in the school for for a couple of years, and only every second weekend in a month I was going home to my parents, and there I got a quite quality education. We learned to play piano, we learned to sing in a choir, we learned to sing solo. The only negative aspect about the entire school was it was very, very Catholic. So we had to learn Latin, we had to learn so many things I could not identify with. And of course I got kicked out of that school a couple of years later, rebelling against everything. But at that school I had my first show, so to say, and singing in the Dome of Regensburg in front of, I think, 3,000 people.
Wow.
At the age of 9 with a full choir. So that was, I think it was, frightening and, well, teasing at the same time. So you loved it, but you don't know why, and you're a little bit insecure at that age. And that's somehow still sticks in my mind. And as an instrumentalist, I played a couple of piano concerts at the age of 9 and 10 on several occasions, also as part of this education.
Sorry, I was going to say, but there's no music in your house growing up, but there must have been instruments for you to be such a prodigy, because you got this scholarship to go to this Harry Potter School of Music.
No, it actually went through the regular school. We went to a normal, like, how you call it, primary school?
Exactly, yes.
And there the teachers figured, okay, that guy is capable of doing something. And then they talked to my parents, and somehow I ended up getting the scholarship. But I was so young, I do not remember everything what they talked about. So
wow, that's like nature versus nurture, you know?
I don't know. I somehow ended there, and I do not play piano anymore. I do not really sing in a choir. Maybe a death metal choir, but that's a different story. But what I still keep from that time, those years, is how they trained my ears. So my education in theory might not be on the level of like a Masters of Arts, but my hearing, my ears is very, very well trained. That's also the reason why I went later on into going down the road, studying something more direction to acoustics, like passive acoustics and sounds and all that developments that have been more interesting and teasing for me, because that's something I understand naturally a little bit better, instead of like old concepts that are on a mathematical point of view not making too much sense, in my opinion. But it's a way different story. So
wow.
Somehow it went down a very natural way of being a metal musician, rebelling against everything. But coming back to a question about all of those stories, my first metal show I played at the age of 16.
And how was that? Because Germany is such a prolific metal country. There's so much competition. How did you approach that first show? Did you feel like you were ready, or did you just say, I'm going to jump up on that stage because I want to be there? I want to be up there with Nile and Cannibal Corpse one day.
I'm not sure. I think we simply got the chance to play in the same building with a couple of other bands that were not necessarily metal bands, and play our first show. We didn't think about too much. There were so many friends and people from the family sticking around, having a drink and watching what the kids are doing. So I do not have any audio or video recordings from that evening, but it must have been horrible.
as all first shows tend to be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was kind of frightening, because every time you present yourself on a stage, you somehow give a certain personality of you to people you don't know at all. So it's how you present yourself. And the first shows have been strange. There was always kind of stage fright, but over the years, I mean, you know how that works.
Oh, I've talked about on the podcast numerous times that I feel like if you don't have stage fright anymore, or like that slight queasiness right before a show, or that weird little stress, then you should stop playing, because you're not going to be, you're not exciting anymore.
Yes and no. I mean, if you still feel excited, if you're really looking forward, okay, let's wait another half an hour, let's warm up, and you really want to play a show because you see there are a lot of enthusiastic fans or friends or even people you don't even know, but you want to show them what you're capable of with your band and playing an awesome show, and then see during the show if you more or less get the attention of the audience, if you really crack the nut and in the end you gain a couple of new fans. That's still a lot exciting for me, to be honest. And also I do not have any stage fright. I'm not sure if that stays the same. Think about you ever get the chance to play in front of like 60 or 80,000 people on a big festival main stage. Maybe that tickling or itching from back in the days is coming back at that point, but who knows? I mean, we're playing death metal.
Is that how you approach writing new material too? Do you want to always just show the world everything that you can do?
Not anymore.
No? How has that changed?
Maybe in my early 20s when I recorded music, I somehow felt to show people what we are capable of as musicians, but to be honest, on the long term, it doesn't make too much sense. When I, for example, put together set lists for our recent tours, I always have to think about, okay, that song, yeah, it's super amazing, it's super shreddy, it's extreme and demanding for everything, but it doesn't work live at all. People get bored because the transition between having a super recorded and clean polished production in the perfect environment of a studio, and then you are capable of listening to every single song, every single detail of each composition. It's a completely different to if you're playing live and the circumstances are not perfect. So also the approach, if you're on stage and you're always on the very, very edge of what you are capable of, you barely can enjoy what you're doing on stage. And that's what I learned during the last, let's say, 10 years, a lot. And I rather enjoy playing a cool show, and I'm only a couple of times on the edge. Like there are always a couple of songs or parts you really, really, really have to, sit down and rehearse your ass off. But at the same time, there are a couple of songs where you can simply, do some 80s rock moves on stage. And somehow keeping this balance and dynamic in the show is also what people off the stage enjoy. And that's what I learned during the last couple of years. That's also how I changed a little bit how I write music and also how we play live shows.
You've written it so that you can enjoy yourself and breathe.
Yeah, that's the point. I do not want to stay on one position. I'm singing aside from playing guitar. I do not want to only stay on one point on the stage and not being able to enjoy anything because you're so focused on not playing a single mistake. I don't need that anymore. So I rather enjoy playing a cool show, having a good time with everyone, and sometimes here and there it shines through what you're capable of, but it's not the point why I'm making music.
Yes, it's very important to it should be fun for us too, as much as it's fun for the crowd to witness us. Yeah,
that's the point. It's just about having a good time. In the end, even if you're playing in an extreme death metal band, it's somehow entertainment.
It's entertainment, but it's also very difficult at the same time for the members. Cryptopsy, over the years, we've had lots of lineup changes. Sadly, Obscura has that same story. Recently, you guys lost just about your whole lineup. Would you like to touch on that?
Oh, well, the guys just decided they want to do something completely else. To be honest, I was quite surprised on that move because we just finished our last tour in, early March. So we haven't had to cancel any shows. That was extremely, extremely lucky. And I enjoyed the tour. The entire mood was kind of cool. And everything turned out well. I played double duties. I had my other band also on tour, Thulcandra. So I played 2 shows a night and it was cool. I mean, a lot of people doing the shows. The attendance was cool. It was not overwhelming. It was not underwhelming. It was just a cool tour. And, Well, a couple of days after, I got an email of the three gentlemen deciding to leave the ship. So I was really surprised. I didn't see that coming. But, I mean, musical differences, if you're not on the same page anymore, rather those guys do what they want to do. I will focus on what I always did. Like, I follow what I have in mind for Obscura. And I think this is the best solution instead of doing a full compromise and writing an album nobody's happy with afterwards. So I'm fine with that. So although I was surprised by the move, but I don't have any bad feel for anyone. So it's just natural. It's fine.
That's a very mature answer. You sound very unemotional about it, which is how I would like to approach projects at moments, but I find myself being very too emotional. What is going to be your next step to fill up this lineup once again?
Oh, I do have a full lineup already.
Good for you. How did that happen?
Doing a couple of calls.
That's fucking awesome.
I mean, the band seems quite interesting for a lot of musicians to play with, since we are touring regularly. We are playing nice shows all around the world, and that's attracting a lot of people. I do not announce any open auditions, but I didn't count yet, but I got so many messages from musicians, bassists, guitarists, drummers. Yeah, it seems like the band is quite interesting for a lot of people. But to come back to a question, I think we just go on and everything sticks to the plan. This year was planned for songwriting anyway, so we booked the studio with the other three guys that now jumped ship. So I keep the recording dates, and everything goes ahead as planned. So just with a different lineup. So more I can't say about it. I was surprised by the entire move.
It's hard losing members. It's a touring vibe. You work as a unit. I always mourn when I lose someone in a band. How does songwriting happen in Obscura? Is it something that happens in a group setting, or is it you that comes with songs and works with other people?
That's a complete different approach. We change every time we write a record. If you have a look to the credits of the Obscura records, there are some songs written by a single songwriter. There are a couple of songs written by a couple of people. Sometimes you only have two guys. It depends on the flow. It completely depends on the flow. And what I learned during the last 15, almost 20 years is simply to keep the creative process out of the studio. So what I do since 2 records now is going to invest a lot of time into a full pre-production. And to run a pre-production, I changed my approach a little bit. So what I do right now, for example, for the new record, or what I did, is I keep the spontaneous moments. That's always a problem I had with writing music before, because you write down every single note of the band, every single drum hit, every single slap on the bass, whatever. Everything is written down, but that costs a lot of time, and sometimes you lose the flow about that, and that's something I try to solve. So I wrote the new album in a little bit different way. So I recorded drafts. 10 drafts will become 10 songs, and for each draft I took 1 day, and I simply recorded everything I had in mind for a certain song I have in mind. And with all those ideas, I form my arrangement afterwards, and those arrangements are going to be presented to entire lineup. And from that stage on, everybody is involved. So although there's like one songwriter credited in an album, every musician in the band somehow has his influence and somehow brought his stamp to a certain song or an album, depending on the lineup. So that's also the reason why I always look for musicians that have their very own stamp. I'm not looking for a guitarist who is a copycat of the previous guitarist. I never did that. I want to have people who bring their very own stamp in it.
Yeah, like Death did.
Yeah, probably, or other bands that have a lot of lineup changes, and there are a lot out there, unfortunately.
It's hard being in a touring death metal band. It's we get some money, but family happens and touring conditions are rigorous, and it's very difficult. A lot of people don't understand how rigorous it is. Yeah.
Being in a touring band is a complete different story than working in a project, having a recording session once up in a year, and everybody delivers their files the guys recorded in their home studio. Being in a touring band is a complete different story, since you spend so much time together in a very small space, and sometimes the conditions are not perfect, actually most of the time, but you don't care because there are a lot of fans going to the shows and they want to see a show, and of course the show must go on. It's an old rule.
It's all for the art. Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're sick as hell, if you puke everything, it doesn't matter. You go on stage.
Can you give me some shout outs of who these artists are that have joined your Obscura?
No.
Okay.
Not yet, but we present the first one on 29th of April.
Cool.
If that is a spoiler enough.
Cool. I think this is going to come out on the same day as that, actually.
Oh, perfect. So watch out. We present everyone a little bit apart from each other.
Yeah, no problem.
To keep it a little bit more interesting, but I do have the lineup. We already work on the music. So
let's talk about doing double duty, playing in Thulcandra and Obscura back to back, or were they back to back, or was there a band in between? How did you do that? How did you feel while you did that?
Well, it was my decision to bring Thulcandra on tour, so there's no reason to complain.
But it's not easy.
That's true. But there was a band in between. The entire touring lineup consisted of Obscura, Triumphant from the Netherlands,
yes.
Thulcandra, and a very, very talented band from France called Fractal Universe. Quite proggy, techy death metal with a slightly note of Gojira. So definitely a band I can recommend. And doing all those double duties was not a big issue. To be honest, I thought about having issues with, the voice. Not because of the amount of time, but actually the cooling down time of the band that was playing in between. So between Thulcandra and Obscura, I had to wait roughly 1 hour because Gotitron played a show plus building up, building down, simply the changeovers. And there I figured in the past in studio sessions, sometimes this cooling down time, if you have a break, hurt your vocals. So what I did before, I have a vocal cabin in my room I bought some time ago. I simply trained that. So I played both shows before the tour started at home.
Wow.
In its entirely. A couple of, roughly 2 or 3 weeks. Not every day, but every second or third day I played the entire thing with both, and that paid off. So the first day I had maybe in the last 2 songs of Obscura a little bit, not of issues, but you could hear that the vocal strings have been a little bit overused. The second day it was okay-ish, and from the third day on, it ran down. It was no issue at all, and I was quite surprised as everybody else that this was working out well. Yeah, you have to be honest. So
I get it. It's going out on tour and doing it night after night is hard enough, let alone 2 sets just about back to back. So cheers to you for being able to pull that off. You guys have toured for many, many, many years and have toured with a lot of amazing acts. If you could travel back in time and relive one of your tours, what tour would that be?
Japan 2010.
I love Japan, yeah.
Yeah, first of all, Japan is awesome. Second, we played with Nile, with Triptychon, and Obscura. And in Obscura, we had a quite family guy helping us out called Steve DiGiorgio.
Oh, really? Oh, shit, I didn't know that. Fuck.
That was really, really fun. And I had birthday with Steve DiGiorgio playing in Obscura and celebrating that with Tom G. Warrior in Tokyo. Think about that.
Wow. Okay, I get it. That sounds like a good one. What would be the worst thing that has ever happened to you on tour?
On tour?
You mentioned vomiting, shitting.
Yeah, all that happened and probably will happen again. But the very, very worst experience I had on tour was, I think, after our first US tour with Cannibal Corpse, 2009. We had some shows scheduled after that tour. They called it, I think, the Contamination something tour with Abysmal Dawn and a couple of other bands. And we called it the Swine Flu tour. Because at that time the swine flu was around everywhere and everybody in the band turned so sick. But we still kept playing. Like, everyone in the band was sick, but we still kept playing until I lost my voice. I was not able to speak properly anymore. And I was just puking like green saliva, whatever. And then we simply had to break up and leave home. That was the worst so far. But
nothing worse than being sick on the road. It's so brutal. I luckily have never been overly ill on tour, as I knock on wood.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not happening. One last question. What is your hangover cure?
My hangover cure? First, a lot of complaining about myself.
I imagine you had a hangover after that aborted Cryptopsy show.
I don't remember. That's a good. I do not have a real hangover cure, but I think about that after having a second of this beers I'm drinking right now.
Yes, I hope that you do have a second. I'm always the worst influence.
Oh, Jesus.
Steffen, thank you so much for hanging out with me, drinking a craft beer, talking about your life, your music. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to come to Munich again, or for you to be back out on tour over here so that we can hang out in person and do this again for real. Cheers, brother.
Would be a pleasure. Cheers, and thank you very much for the interview.
Cheers. Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Steffen's such a cool, excellent, very talented musician. Super stoked that I had the chance to speak with him. I love how he has approached this new creative time for his band. I like how he approached it so mechanically almost, just moving forward. He already has some new members, so all of you Obscura fans out there, get ready for a new record because he's going into the studio, as he mentioned. I hope that you have a good rest of the week. Remember, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. is the Vox&Hops Thirsty Thursday virtual hang. Come out, hang out. It's always a good time, and I absolutely love these, so join us. I hope you have a good rest of the week. I have one more episode coming at you this Friday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.